The club room was empty by the time I'd gotten up there. I wasn't surprised, to be honest. I dumped my belongings on the sofa and went to knock quietly on the library door. I peeked in before stepping through. Velos was at his desk, as usual. It's been a while. He looked up as soon as I entered.
Miss Lewis, thank you for coming by.
Well, Allie said you wanted to speak with me.
Indeed I did.
He motioned me toward the desk.
Miss Fisher indicated you'd like to help the interns with their assignments this week.
Well, if there's something I can help with, yeah. He looked at me over the top of his glasses.
She also indicated you had been approached by a drifter over the weekend, that it pulled some of your hair out.
It wasn't a big deal.
Perhaps not, but it's also not a small matter.
Danny was with me, and he didn't think too much of it.
Danny is one of our most talented and dedicated interns, but he doesn't know everything there is to know just yet.
Fair enough. But the drifter ran off, and I haven't seen it since. He sighed, which I wasn't taking as a good sign when it came to him deciding to let me help.
I don't think it's a good idea to get you involved with the agency so early. But Miss Fisher insisted it would be good for you. While I don't entirely agree, perhaps we can permit you to help with some of the early patrols on Samhain, just in your own neighborhood where you're unlikely to encounter anything dangerous.
Really? I definitely could not keep the glee off my face. Even though it still didn't give me anything to do until the weekend, it was still kind of exciting.
However, you are to be in your home by sundown. Period. I understand that Miss Fisher has installed a barrier there.
Yeah, she did that this past weekend.
Good.
Thank you. I really appreciate this. I think it'll just be nice to see how things work and everything, instead of feeling like I'm stuck on the fringes with no idea what's really going on.
How is your research progressing?
Ugh. I huffed a sigh as I leaned on the counter. I haven't found much, really.
I understand you're having some issues with a glamour spell.
Wow. They really do tell you everything, don't they?
It's my job to oversee the students at the school. So yes, they answer my questions when I ask them.
I made a face at that. Well, yes. I'm sure you've already heard the details. And really, the glamour issue isn't helping on the research front. I was already sidetracked by figuring out how to appease the brownie my brother upset. Now this. And I still don't know anything about how I ended up Fae in the first place, why I'm using glamour without realizing, how I'm doing that. Not to mention still not figuring out anything about my brother or if my disappearances 5 years ago are related to any of this. Also, side note, I did realize something. It finally dawned on me that the glamour spell wearing off is kind of similar to a transformation, if you will, for Nora. And I'm like, man, what a perfect thing for a werewolf to help her get through, right? Like sudden transformations. Danny would know exactly what she's going through. Just like, it's a perfect, I don't know. I just really like how that's all wrapped up into the werewolf story. So kudos on the story for that. I'm just like, man, I'm thick. I just finally realized, wait a minute, this is kind of similar. So very cool. I'm done ranting now. And if they are, what exactly that means. I sighed again, giving him an apologetic smile. It's okay, Nora. I just went on a rant myself. So, from Nora and from me, sorry for ranting.
It's quite alright. Your frustration is understandable. But perhaps you're on the right track with this small break of yours. Perhaps it's time to leave behind the books and try to work through your own experiences one by one. While I know you're missing some memories regarding your past, perhaps compiling what you do recall will be useful. It may be that there are clues you're overlooking. You're more likely to learn something about yourself from your own memories than from unrelated books.
I guess that's true.
And even if you need a break from your research, there's no reason to sit around and wait for the holiday, is there?
You're right. I was surprised that he was so, well, reasonable. He usually seemed so gruff and distant. I guess he wasn't really all that bad after all. Thank you. I'll definitely do that.
Good luck. I hope you find what you're looking for.
Me too. I left him there after that and returned to the club room, mulling over what he'd said. I didn't really know how much I'd be able to dredge up that I hadn't already ruminated on, but I'd give it a shot. It wasn't that I hadn't given at least some thought to my own childhood memories anyway. But time has a way of distorting things to the point you can't always tell what's memory or not, though. So I wasn't sure how reliable those memories were. If I could have bounced them off of Spencer, if we could work on it together. As it was, I just kind of wanted to bounce heavy objects off his head. No working together. So I was on my own with this one. At least for now. I flopped on the sofa and pulled out my journal. Writing down old memories, trying to remember weird events, it all sounded easy enough. But where did I even start with that? I could remember laying under trees and seeing faces in the branches above. Real or just imagination? I didn't even know anymore. Spencer and I would play in the woods behind the house, and we'd sometimes encounter hikers, like the lady in green. I frowned. We would see her a lot, a pale woman with long blonde hair and a green dress. She walked with a funny sort of limp, and every time she saw us, she'd immediately walk us back to our house. Once I was nearly certain I'd seen a tail in the folds of her skirt, but Spencer told me I was seeing things. Remembering her, I suddenly thought of a fairy I'd read about when I first started my research. A solitary fairy that wore green and was known to help lost children find their way home. Seriously? This is very useful. Velos, look at you, helping our girl out. This is why it's so nice to tell people when stuff's happening to you, because they can give you ideas. A glass stick is a solitary fairy that alternately likes herding cattle, tending children, and violently murdering any man she encounters. Because those are definitely 3 hobbies that mesh well. There are several variations, but in nearly all of them she wears a long green dress or skirt to cover goat legs, a cow's tail, or webbed feet. Glashdags exhibit pretty typical fae behavior, in that even though they can ruthlessly murder people, they can also be very kind. Just don't be a man and you're fine. Simple enough. Seriously? Man, I'd actually completely forgotten about her. We saw her so many times. She caught us playing on this mound out in the woods and immediately called us away, scolding us for playing there. And she walked us home. That mound. We played there a lot, but... I shook my head. It felt like I was forgetting something about it, but I had no idea what. I spent the next hour trying to remember that and whatever else I could from back then. The lady in the green dress, the old man that always sat in the old apple tree at Grandma and Grandpa's house, and other things I hadn't thought about in years. I had a splitting headache by the time Allie texted me. Hey, back. Wanna come down? Sure, give me a bit. Outside parking lot. Be there soon. I yawned and slid the journal back in my book bag. To be honest, I wasn't even sure how relevant any of the stuff I wrote down even was. It's not like I had any sudden revelations about myself, beyond that I had a really weird childhood. Or a very active imagination. And you just so happen to imagine a fairy from your research perfectly. I was leaning on the former, all things considered. Which was what again? You had a weird childhood. Yeah, that would probably make the most sense. If anything, I had more questions than ever. I yawned and started out of the club, trying to get my mind off of it. The more I tried to remember, the worse my headache got. I was definitely overdoing it. I stepped outside and rubbed my eyes as I rolled my neck and started around to the side of the school. But I stopped when I saw a dark figure crouching on the grassy area in front of the school. Oh, okay, I thought it was going to be the drifter. Brenna? What's she doing? She stood, walked a few feet, and crouched again. Picking up trash? Huh, that was surprising. I didn't really get that kind of vibe from her. Brenna. Brenna can just as easily kill a Spencer. I mean, I'd rather have her yell at me for assuming she was picking up trash and I was trying to help her than walking past her pretending not to see her. And then she, like, hisses at my back and casts a spell on me. I don't know. I don't know how cat cheese work. Well, Allie would probably come looking for me if I took too long, but it was hard to walk past her without helping. I cautiously set down my backpack as I went to help her pick up some of the trash. It looked like maybe a group of students had been eating here at some point. There were wrappers and a few paper cups, too. Ugh, what a mess. I bent to pick up one of the papers, a little annoyed. There was a bin not even 20 feet away. What do you think you're doing? I looked up at her, and she was standing not far away, glaring down at me. Well, I knew she was gonna get mad at me no matter what. Helping? It looked like a big mess for one person. Brenna scoffed. Huh, I don't need your help. No, of course not. I just thought it was polite to offer it. You aren't offering it. You're forcing it on me without even asking if I want it. Okay, I suppose I did do that. I'm sorry. Huh. Humans are always like that. Presumptuous. Full of yourselves. I mean, I'm not really human, apparently. She leveled an amused glare at me, speaking with what almost felt like really weird affection. And so stupid. What does that even mean? Brenna walked past me with an armful of trash. She glared my way as she passed. You are also far too kind, considering your woeful lack of self-preservation. You would do better as a little human child than one of us. Be very, very careful. The wilds where fairies sleep are too dangerous for the likes of you. But it might be a little late for that lesson now. But I'm not... She walked away before I could finish, dumping the trash and disappearing inside. Thanks for the cryptic warnings, Brenna. Always a pleasure. What the heck? There you are! What's taking you so long? Nothing. Just... Brenna was here. Being Brenna. Well, let's go home. It's getting late. Okay, I'm ready. We walked to her car together, and she drove me home. By the time I arrived back, Mom was also getting home, so I didn't have much time between homework and helping with dinner to think more about what had happened during the day. I was exhausted by the time I fell into bed and just hoped that would keep me from trying to sleepwalk away into the night. I hope you put down your flowers. Okay. Even with the barrier, it was a little unnerving to think I was still trying to escape. That was the last thought I had before falling asleep. Okay, it's Wednesday. Presumably you didn't walk out into the woods. It was chilly, but the sun was nice and warm if you sat in just the right spot. The week was going by pretty fast. It felt like the lull before the storm, though, if only because Samhain was around the corner. I wondered what everyone else was up to. The rest of the club had been noticeably scarce during school, then Allie had brought me straight home since everyone was going to be busy. Sometimes it felt like there was just too much going on in my life at the moment. Too many revelations and new people and weird things to process. How much of this could I handle before I started to break? I wasn't sure I wanted to find out. What the... The weird sound immediately set me on edge, but I quickly realized it was coming from Danny's yard. Getting to my feet, I wandered to the fence and pulled a plastic lawn chair over so I could stand on it and peek over the top. It would have been embarrassing if that had been his dad or something. But it sounded like a ball being thrown against something, so I had a feeling it was Danny. I was right. He was standing at the back corner of the garage, throwing a football against the house and catching it when it bounced back to him. There was something sort of sad about watching him do it alone. Maybe because it felt like he should have been able to practice and play with the team, not by himself in an empty backyard. Don't leave him alone and don't continue watching. Because then it'll be like, whoa, hey, hello. I hesitated, but finally called out to him. He immediately turned and smiled brightly when he saw me.
Hey!
Forsaking the ball, he jogged over, grinning up at me. This was probably the only time in my life I was ever going to get to look down at him. It was weird to see him from this angle. He had amazing hair, all thick and curly. My fingers were suddenly itching to play with it.
Going to say hi or just stare?
I leaned against the fence, resting my elbows on it. Your hair is really thick. I want to braid it.
No. I had enough of that when my sister was still living at home.
Oh, you have a sister? Older, I presume?
Yes, and she thankfully lives far away now.
I grinned down at him. Really now? So your sister used to bully you?
You have no idea.
Well, I can't say I blame her. Your hair definitely sort of calls out to be played with.
Hey, I wouldn't mind if you just played with it. Braiding, though, not so much. But turnaround is fair play. If you get to play with mine, I get to play with yours.
I was so glad no one was around to hear that statement out of context. I wasn't quite sure Danny realized how it sounded either, so my mind was probably just in the gutter. Well, if it helps Nora, my mind was right there with you. I cleared my throat awkwardly. So, you're not playing catch with Elliot today?
Nah, I think he's still asleep.
I thought he didn't sleep much.
He doesn't. At night. Apparently he gets sleepy right around dawn and grabs a few hours in the morning, and then it's nearly impossible to get him up. So what exactly are you up to? Spying on the neighbors?
Nah, not all of them. Just you.
I see. Well, I guess I don't mind too much.
Good thing. He shoved his hands in his pockets and smiled awkwardly.
Wanna go for a walk?
Okay, I'll meet you out front.
Sure.
I walked around the side of the house to the front yard, meeting Danny by the front fence.
Ready?
I glanced back at the house worriedly. I should probably let my mom know I'm leaving.
We won't be gone long. Just to the bridge and back.
Okay. She was busy anyway. I doubted she'd notice I was gone. Yeah, let's go. I don't have to tell them every time I go for a walk. It's not like I was a little kid anymore, and I had no intention of getting lost today. Does anyone ever go out with the intention of getting lost?
Okay.
He led me to a little paved sidewalk set back from the side of a road a bit and shielded by trees on one side. After a moment, Danny gently took my hand, fingers sliding between mine.
Is this okay?
I flushed and looked away, unable to keep the goofy grin off my face. Of course it's okay. As if he even had to ask that. He was kind of repeating what you said the first time. It's cute.
Good.
Ah, the blushes. I gave his hand a gentle squeeze, and he squeezed back, smiling back down at me. Flushing all the way to the tips of my ears, I looked away quickly, but moved a little closer. We walked in silence for a few minutes.
I've been thinking a lot about everything going on lately. With Sean, Derek, on our date.
You too?
You've been thinking about it?
Well, I'm worried. About you, about them. I mean, there was that thing about loners going missing. I wanted to ask about it, but I haven't really seen you much.
Yeah, we're still not sure who the culprit is. All the victims are werewolves unaffiliated with a clan.
Like the three of you.
Yeah.
That's terrifying. Who could be behind something like that?
Anyone. Human hunters, a werewolf that doesn't like humans. Everyone's a bit on edge.
Why would the agency not do something?
It's hard. Loners are usually standoffish, and if they won't talk to us, it's pretty hard to find any leads about what's happening.
Would being part of a clan really offer that much protection?
It's hard to say. It might.
Something was definitely bothering him.
Nora, what if they're right? What if I really don't belong here anymore?
I wasn't entirely sure what to say to that. He sounded so sad. I sighed quietly and thought very carefully about my answer. I'd say that's your decision to make. No one can tell you when or if you'll ever come to that conclusion. And if you decide this is where you belong, then they should respect that.
What about you, Nora? Where do you think I belong?
Oh dear. I wasn't sure I was at all equipped to answer that. I couldn't even keep my own life straight lately, much less decide how he should live his. Still, looking up at him, I felt he really needed an answer to this. He looked so sad and so lost. I mean, if I told you where you belong, I'm no better than the werewolf guys. Constantly pressuring you. You need to make this choice for yourself, whichever it is. If it's with your family, great. If it's with them, great. But you gotta figure that out. I will support you no matter what. No matter what. If you want me to belong with you, I will belong. So, there. I don't think you belong anywhere other than where you want to belong. There isn't some inherent quality that makes you belong somewhere. If you want to be here, if you're happy here, then this is where you should be. And I would miss you if you ran off and focused on doing werewolf things.
I'm glad to hear I'd be missed.
Look, I don't know how much this matters, but to be honest, the first thing I remember thinking when I found out about you was that, well, I was relieved that you're just a normal guy. It was comforting. I don't think being a werewolf makes you all that different from the rest of us anyway. You're just Danny. Aww, that's sweet. Danny stopped abruptly and pulled me into a tight hug.
Thank you. That actually means a lot.
I hesitated, but wrapped my arms around him and held him back. I was so grateful that we were hidden from the street. Not that I minded being with him, but it would be embarrassing to be seen like this by anyone else. Being in a hidden spot meant I could just enjoy being close to him without worrying about anyone else badgering me about it later. Danny gave me a tight squeeze and stepped back.
Sorry about that.
No, I mean, I didn't mind it.
Ugh. Let's talk about something less depressing. How are you doing? I've barely seen you this week. I heard Velos is going to let you go around with us this weekend before sundown.
Yeah, Allie and I asked if he'd let me do that, just to get my mind off my lack of research progress.
Sorry to hear that's not going well.
I shrugged helplessly. It's not like it was his fault. Well, Velos suggested instead of focusing on book research, I spend more time just thinking about myself, my own memories. That's been an interesting exercise. I mean, I've been doing what he said, writing down anything unusual I can recall.
No luck.
It's not that. I mean, I can't always remember what's real and what might just have been pretend or some weird dream. But I have remembered some things. I think I just ended up with more questions about myself, though.
Why's that?
I don't know.
What is it?
Where we used to live, there was this weird hill in the woods that Spencer and I used to play on. I keep having the feeling there's something important about that hill that I'm forgetting. Fairy hills are a thing in fairy lore. Let's read about fairy hills. Oh, where is the fairy hill? There we go. Fairy hills, or mounds, are frequent dwelling places of the Fae. They appear all throughout folklore. There are even stories of entire hills being lifted on pillars at certain times of year, so the Fae that live in them can celebrate. They are, of course, very dangerous for humans to enter, as terrible things can happen. But that really goes for any fairy dwelling of fairy haunt. I don't know. Maybe there's no connection. Maybe I'm just grasping at any straw. At the same time, that feeling of forgetting something, of trying to recall something that just won't quite surface, is something I've been experiencing a lot lately. But I kind of wish I could go back to the old place, you know? Just look around all the places we used to play, you know?
Why don't we do it then? After the holiday, when it's safer. I'll go with you.
Really?
Yeah, absolutely.
I really appreciate it. I mean, maybe there's nothing there, but that's where we lived for so long. Maybe there are some answers there, or hints, or nothing.
It can't hurt to look.
I leaned on the railing, watching the water trickle off into the trees. I keep thinking about the first time I came down here and encountered that Spriggan. I laughed dryly. I'm so glad I already knew about the club by that time. If I had seen that thing beforehand, I probably would have thought I was going nuts.
I heard it was pretty scary looking. I don't know much about Spriggans.
They're supposed to be pretty mischievous. Thieves, kidnappers, and a lot of other things. Though this one was just sitting under the bridge singing. It's funny. It was quoting this old poem, and then Brenna quoted the same one when she helped me. We must not look at goblin men, we must not buy their fruits. Who knows upon what soil they fed their hungry, thirsty roots? Feels a bit late for that warning. Feels like I've looked too long. I've already been whisked to fairy, already eaten the fruit. It's felt like that since the very first day I was pulled into the club.
Nora?
I started, looking up at him, realizing what I'd been saying. Sorry, I just have been buried in my own thoughts a little too long, I think.
It's okay.
Anyway, I keep thinking that if Spencer saw all the same things I saw as a kid, why am I the only one in this position now?
I don't know. Unfortunately, I haven't learned a whole lot about fairies and how these things work. Maybe the only reason he ever saw them was because he was with you.
Maybe. We were silent again. I watched the distant trees swaying. The foliage had noticeably thinned as autumn crept on. Everything would be bare soon. There was a little flash of movement that caught my eyes in the distant trees. I caught Danny's arm. Danny, do you see that? I pointed to a large shape half concealed by brush. A wolf. I was almost certain. It was definitely too big to be a coyote. Besides, they were skittish and wary. A coyote would have already scampered off. This wolf was just watching us. Danny's body was rigid and tense as the wolf looked our way. Anyone we know?
No.
And he's gone. He grabbed the railing and vaulted himself over the side of the bridge. Danny! He landed with a splash in the shallow water. The wolf broke into a run, crashing away from us through the trees.
Go back home. I need to check this out.
I bit my lip, wanting to argue, but Danny was already running after the wolf. Be careful! Danny didn't answer. I watched him until he disappeared. Please let him be okay. What if that was the person responsible for all the missing werewolves? Oh man. I anxiously headed back up to the house, praying Danny would be okay. How could he just run off like that? It was dangerous. Maybe I should text Elliot. I fished my phone out of my pocket, intending to do that. There was a rustle of leaves behind me. I whirled around, heart in my throat. There was nothing there. I stared into the trees for several minutes, but never saw anything. Every hair on the back of my neck was standing up as I ran back up to my house. It wasn't until I was safely in my bedroom that I finally sat down to text Elliot about Danny, hoping he'd be able to go after him and make sure everything was okay.